I'm going to show y'all how to do what I do. The first thing you need to learn is how to outline and flood a cookie. First things first, get your line icing and some scissors. If you'd like to use piping tips with your icing, I can show you how to do that in a different video. But I, like most other cookie decorators I've seen in recent years, use tipless bags. That means instead of a coupler and a tip, you cut a hole directly into the bag itself. Run your finger over the bag until you feel the seam. It'll be slightly raised and a little rough to the touch. Then flatten the tip of the bag so that the seam is on one side and the crease is on the other, like how it was before you took it out of the packaging. Once it's flattened, get your scissors. I have personally found that cutting straight across the tip makes the icing curl when it's squeezed out of the bag, which at best is very annoying and at worst can ruin a cookie. Cutting at a diagonal pretty much fixes this issue. When you cut the tip, you want the lower side of the diagonal line to be on the seam and the higher side of the diagonal line to be on the crease. Doing it the opposite way can mess with the icing almost worse than cutting it straight across. Always start with a small cut. If the hole isn't big enough, you can always cut off a bit more, but you can't add it back if you take off too much. Once you've made the cut, you're going to use your fingers to flatten the tip of the bag again. This time, make sure that the seam and the crease are on top of each other. This will open the tip to a rounder shape rather than leaving it flat. Cutting the flood icing bag doesn't require you to be as careful. Because it's thinner than the line icing, cutting it straight across or diagonal or whichever way that you would like doesn't really affect how it comes out. So I just flatten it like before, cut straight across, flatten it the other way so it's open, and then you're ready to use it. For this video, I have two cookies. I have the do cookie, where I'll show you what I would normally do to decorate, and the don't cookie, where I'll show you two major mistakes that I personally really struggled with when I was starting out. When you pipe icing onto a cookie for the first time, your first instinct is to hold the tip as close to the cookie as possible and to just start squeezing. This will almost always leave you with a bumpy and uneven line. The combination of speed, pressure, and precision that you'd need to get smooth, pretty lines while piping like this takes a lot of practice and is mostly used for writing in script and cursive on cakes and cookies. The easiest way to get smooth and even lines is to do what I like to call lift and drag. Hold the icing bag in your hand so that the seam is facing down. Squeeze the bag just enough so that a tiny bit of icing comes out, and then touch that bit of icing against the cookie. Squeeze the bag a little harder, and as the line of icing begins to come out, lift the bag up slightly and begin to drag the line of icing along the edge of the cookie. When you get back around to the point where you started, squeeze a little less and bring your hand closer to the cookie until the bag touches the beginning of the line and it's closed. This method requires practice too, just not as much. You have to find the balance between the speed that you move your hand and the pressure that you squeeze the bag with. If you squeeze too hard but don't move your hand fast enough, you lose control of the icing and it gets kind of wonky. If you don't squeeze hard enough and you move your hand too fast, then you get gaps in your line. Once you get used to it, you'll learn how to adjust the speed and pressure depending on the consistency of your icing, and you'll have enough control to do whatever you want. For comparison, the final step is to flood your cookie. The number one flooding mistake that you can make is putting too much icing. This is an issue you can have no matter the consistency of your flood icing. Some decorators like their icing to be so thin it kind of looks like water. Some like it so thick that they have to manually shake the cookie to get it to settle. But either way, they both have the potential to overflow if you put too much. I'm going to be honest with you guys and admit that overflowing my cookies is still something that I do struggle with sometimes. But the best way that I've learned to avoid it, most of the time, is by doing a border of flood icing right up against the line icing, so that when I start to squeeze the bag harder to properly fill the cookie, I'm not right up against the edge. Even then, the thing that helps the most is to take your time. Don't squeeze too hard and don't go too fast. These are the cookies after they've been left to dry under the fan for a while. Cookie decorating is something that I've been doing for a long time, and I think it's fair to say that it's my passion in life. I still have a lot to learn, but I also have a lot to teach, and it would make me so happy to be able to share with you guys what I know, because I'm always getting questions about how I do things and what I use, and I'm ready to share. So if you have any questions about anything cookie related, anything at all about making the cookies, baking the cookies, making the icing, coloring the icing, any decorating questions, any questions that you have at all, put them in the comments and I will do my best to answer them for you guys. Thank you so much for watching.